Welcome to Zen Footsteps. I have an amazing guest for you today. Many of you who follow me on social media know that I'm absolutely passionate about a subject, and that's fibromyalgia. And my guest today is probably equally, if not more, passionate about fibromyalgia. She's got an incredible story. So Lana, basically, she's had life-changing moments that came after years of battling serious health issues. And Lana spent much of her 20s dealing with chronic urinary tract infections. She had pelvic pain, IBS, and also endometriosis. Now, despite enduring countless medical treatments, surgeries, and endless hospital visits, she managed to reach a stable condition only to face a new diagnosis of fibromyalgia just months after surgery for endometriosis. So in a matter of weeks, Lana went from living independently to being completely bedridden, reliant on others for even the most kind of basic tasks. But through incredible determination, tireless sort of research that she did on her own, she was able to kind of overcome this and turn it around. So Lana now doesn't have fibromyalgia, and she's dedicated her time as a result of this to raising awareness and offering hope to others through her social media channels. And her mission essentially is to share her knowledge, what she did to gain this kind of incredible, remarkable change in her life, because I don't come across it very often. So fibromyalgia can often make you feel alone. This is something, again, I come across with many, many of my followers. So I'm really excited to hear Lana's story and what she did and offer some inspiration and kind of hope to others. So Lana, welcome. I am so pleased to have you here on the show. This is my second show. So tell me, how did your journey start? What happened?
Well, thank you so much for having me. So my journey first started when I experienced widespread pain all over my body and fatigue. That pain would move from one side of my body to the next. It would change hourly, day by day. I never knew what my pain was going to do next. And then the fatigue it was like somebody turned the off switch to my body. So those symptoms was where it all first began, and I just couldn't understand what was happening to my body. I went from, in a matter of weeks, to being what I thought was reasonably healthy to being bedridden, not able to leave the house, and I was fully dependent on help.
So what did you think this was? Because there's a stereotype, isn't there, about kind of fibromyalgia in terms of age, and what one sort of thinks about this, and we sort of, we think people in sort of 50 plus with fibromyalgia. What was your initial thought then? What did you think you actually had?
Honestly, at the time I just thought maybe it's some sort of viral, after some sort of viral infection, there's that ongoing sort of fatigue. It didn't explain the pain, but I just thought it will just pass. And then I thought maybe it's something wrong with maybe it's like arthritis,
Yeah.
something wrong with my joints. And then I remember thinking maybe it's something to do with my nerves. But yeah, I had no idea. It wasn't something I was knowledgeable about.
So when from that process, so talk me through that kind of intro. Go through that process with me of how this all came about right from the beginning.
Gosh, I remember having just had my laparoscopy for my endometriosis. And it took me about 2.5 months to recover from that. And then they changed my medication to help with sort of regulate kind of my cycle. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, perhaps maybe the change in medication has just caused fatigue in my body. But yeah, I remember being able to do less and less day by day. It was like my life was being stripped away from me. I could barely walk as much as I used to. I started getting really out of breath from doing simple activities. And then I would have to plan my whole day. I would think, oh gosh, I can't do that anymore because I'm going to feel like this. And yes, I can go to that meal, but I'm going to have to spend the whole day resting just so I can make it out for that hour and two before I
Wow.
come back again.
And were you working at the time as well?
I was working at the time, and I did actually end up having to leave my job.
Well, that's pretty tough. So in terms of your family, they must have been quite worried about you then, I presume.
Yeah, I mean, nobody knew what was happening. My mom especially was quite worried. I
Yeah.
think she felt a lot of anger that I hadn't sort of communicated properly what was happening to me,
Daughters
and
and
just
mothers.
didn't understand why I was just trying to push through it and just trying to just get on with life instead of saying, hey, there is something very wrong with me and I need help.
So with
Yeah.
with the diagnosis of fibromyalgia, who made that diagnosis? How did they make it? Because a lot of people say to me, I don't know if I got fibromyalgia. How did I diagnose this? And I know that you and I have talked over social media about this, and the actual diagnosis of fibromyalgia, I'm not overly happy with it. I think we're kind of still in the dark ages with it. So what diagnosis did you go through, just so listeners can understand what they do and how they came to that conclusion?
So I think I was quite fortunate that I got a diagnosis within 3 months. There were a lot of blood tests done, a lot of sort of kind of touching kind of pressure points of my body to see
Yeah.
kind of my reactions. Lots of questioning, just to kind of get an idea of my lifestyle, what I was able to do, what I wasn't. And I think I remember when I walked into the appointment, I remember having to hold onto the wall for my balance. And I remember a nurse coming up to me and asking if I was okay because I was struggling to breathe from having walked the walk from the car
Wow.
into the room. So I think you could see, I know oftentimes it's a hidden illness, but I think in that moment you could see there was something wrong. But yeah, having ruled out everything, and we're talking about inflammation, we're talking about viral infections, we're talking about COVID, we're talking everything. Everything was ruled out. And the last thing they started asking me about was my mental health, things I've been through, perhaps trauma. And then I was referred to the pain clinic, and it was the pain clinic who diagnosed me with fibromyalgia.
And how did you, again, one of the hardest things I have is primarily, is you know better than me, it's primarily women that get fibromyalgia. Was there any point when they alluded to that it's all in your head? Because a lot of my followers say to me, I've been told it's all in my head, and they feel dismissed, unheard, and that can make you feel quite despondent. Were you ever told, oh, it's all in your head?
Not by health practitioners, but by some people around me. So
Wow.
unfortunately, kind of people who are in my life, who are not in my life anymore, asked or suggested and said, is it kind of in your head? Are you sort of making this up? One of the doctors at the time actually asked me, do you have depression? And I remember thinking, what has depression got anything to do with being physically in pain? But I think to some extent I was quite lucky. I didn't get sort of ostracized by
Yeah, that's
everyone.
a
There was
tough one. I mean, I've
just a
got
few people. Yeah.
I've got so many questions for you because you probably know my sister's got fibromyalgia, and I before I my sister had fibromyalgia, I can put my hand up to feeling guilty and being guilty of this and thinking, oh, is this just sort of some psychological illness or something like
Mm.
that? But I know that my sister's a tough cookie, and so when she got it, it was like, wow, this is something really, really real. And I started doing my research. I've written a book about it. It's something that I'm really passionate about, but I haven't suffered it myself. And the closest that people say to me is a bit like ME in terms of the fatigue. They're absolutely exhausted and they're just
Mm.
sleeping and sleeping and sleeping. In terms of food, how did it affect your eating?
I didn't have to do anything in terms of my diet. I mean, when I was trying to figure out how to manage my symptoms and get better,
Yeah.
um, I did make a lot of dietary changes, but they weren't the solution. I think diet changes are good. That will always be good, but it wasn't necessarily the thing that you need in order to improve.
So you didn't have a case where you're like losing weight through it or anything else like that?
At the time, I did actually lose a lot of weight.
Yeah.
I dropped down to 46 kg, and I think that's just because I didn't have the energy to eat as well. It was the
Yeah.
mere act of just feeding myself was exhausting. I remember after a meal, I would have to go to bed, like lie back down again.
And within that, did you come across the spoon technique? The spoon.
I've heard that. Is that where that is the whole hashtag
Yeah, so
spooning?
basically what happens is if you've got fibromyalgia, what you say to yourself is, I mean, they say spoon, I don't know why, but anyway. So a spoon is a unit of energy. And let's say, for example, you were my sister, and I would say to you, how many spoons do you got? Let's say you got 10 in a day,
Okay.
okay? And I'd call you up and you'd say to me, I've used all my spoons. So I go, okay, no problem. We'll talk another day. So it's about making people aware of your energy levels, like a car running out of petrol, but also it's about the fact that you yourself have to put boundaries in. Because one of the things I find with a lot of people with fibromyalgia, they're kind of the people that are very kind, very caring, and very giving, but they don't give to themselves. They're not kind to themselves. Does that relate to you?
Makes so much sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And they end up almost being people pleasers, right? Do you know what I mean? I'm again.
I still resonate with that. Yeah.
It's quite a common thing. So we've been to the hospital. We've had your diagnosis.
Yeah.
What at that point you didn't know what fibromyalgia is, I presume.
Yeah, I mean, I remember them saying the word, and I went, "What? Five a word?" I couldn't even say the word, let alone know where it was.
Yeah,
But like everyone else, went straight to Google, went
yeah.
down a rabbit hole, spent hours researching, and didn't come out of it anymore with a clearer understanding of what it was. I was still just as confused. There was a lot of mis kind of understanding and misconceptions around it online. I
I think
remember
so. I
that.
think there's a lot of misinformation too, isn't
Yeah,
there? There's a lot of, I mean, I've had people saying to me it's in their head. I've had people saying to me it's a this and it's that. And I mean, my own personal research, if I put my nutrition hat on, it's startling what I'm finding because every single fibromyalgia patient that I did this survey on they've all got the same nutritional deficiencies. And it's quite unusual.
interesting.
So you don't. So the nutritional deficiency that I found is at the top was a mineral called silica, and silica is what is responsible for one of the things responsible in connective tissue. And if you think of the cell size and the cell membrane, so if that cell collapses, obviously it's not going to function, correctly. And one of the things with fibromyalgia, a lot of people say, and again, I'd like your opinion on this, is that sometimes they feel suffocated or they can't breathe, lack of oxygen. Did you have any of those sort of?
Yes, I do resonate. I do remember that. Yeah.
Okay, so that's one of the things that I look at. So what was the okay? So what's the next step? So we're going down Dr. Google as as we all do. Where did you go from there?
I went into a very dark space after that
Yeah,
because I couldn't find accurate information that was helpful. Everything that I read was contradictory. Everyone had different theories, opinions, but the whole thing that stuck out to me was incurable. There's no
right.
getting better from this. And I remember just thinking, I can't have my life taken away from me at the age of 24 when after everything that I've been through already, to then have that diagnosis where I couldn't even leave my bed. I wasn't even fully there. I had like struggled with memory issues and brain fog. And I just thought, I can't live like this. I don't want to go on. So yeah, fell into quite a state of depression at that point.
Well, that must be pretty tough. I mean, I have a daughter she's 26, so you're just a year older than my daughter, and that would be incredibly debilitating if that was to happen. So, and again, within that, and you're doing all your research, did you find that there were people, like you said, there's contraindications into, you're not, sorry, contradictions in terms of what fibromyalgia was. Did you find that just made you even more confused because you were saying that there's no definitive definition as to what this illness is?
100%. When people asked me, well, what's wrong with you? I didn't know what to tell them. I didn't understand what was happening to my, I had a diagnosis and you would
Yeah.
think there would be some sort of relief from that. But for me, it made things worse because the doctors themselves couldn't offer me an explanation. So how was I going to explain this to my family and friends?
That's a really tough one because as well, especially like you say, if you're not got that sort of medical background and stuff like that. So of the symptoms I know of fibromyalgia, just tell me if these are the sort of common ones. So there's the fatigue,
Mhm.
there's the aching joints, there's the thing in fibromyalgia called flare up. Can you explain a little bit about that in terms of what a flare
I've
up
heard
is?
that from the medical community, but I've never used it myself. It's basically when your symptoms sort of just go whoosh and they just sort of dial up to 10, like you're just knocked out. It's just the most overwhelming experience. And you just can't function in that state. That could last anywhere between a few minutes, a few hours. It could even last a whole day. It's just when everything just kind of goes up. Yeah.
And then it drops. And again, this is the other thing too, is I get people who get fibromyalgia, they 1 minute they look like they're okay, absolutely fine, and then the next minute, bang, it hits you. And people don't understand that because they're going, hold on a second, but yesterday you were okay, and now you can hardly walk. And that's where people go, oh, I think you're making it up, it's all in your head and all this kind of stuff. And I think when I started researching it, I definitely noticed similarities and patterns. I was thinking, well, if you had a few people that had fibromyalgia, right, you could go, okay, it's in the head, but not when you're getting hundreds of thousands of people. And I've yet to kind of figure out why it seems to be on the increase. That's definite.
Mm.
And obviously, we're not going into it too deeply because this is personal to you, but every single person who's got fibromyalgia, there's trauma. I have yet to find a case where there's not trauma. So again, without going into it, but was that the case with you? Was that part of it?
That was actually something that I figured out for myself. The more people I talked to that had fibromyalgia, the one thing everyone had in common was difficult life experiences, childhood adversity, or traumas, or an accumulation of sort of small traumas that had sort of built up. So I always kind of sort of ask people when your symptoms came on, when your fibromyalgia
Yeah.
symptoms first ever started, what was happening in your life? Leading a couple of months, couple of years leading up to them, what was going on in your life? What happened? What had you just experienced? For me, I was struggling balancing so many different health issues. And then endometriosis, change in medication. I had a very difficult surgery with a longer recovery time than expected. I was in a really kind of state of fear, frustration, stress. I had so much anxiety. I was barely able to work. I was in survival mode. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when I trace it back even further, there's so much childhood adversity that those things are still things that I'm working through.
Yeah, it's kind of that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger in a way. I mean, I didn't have by any means an ideal childhood. You know what I mean? People often think, oh, public school boy and all that kind of stuff. I didn't. I had a tough childhood. I grew up with guns. I saw my first dead body when I was 6 years old. I was in Africa. It's a country where everything's trying to eat you or kill you. You know what I mean? So I had that, but I think that again with my research, I believe that, and I allude to this in my book, but women and men, the way they process trauma, I think is very, very different. Very, very different. I think that women were, if we want to go tribal, you want to go back to the tribal situation. Women were a tribe together. They'd help each other. They'd vent off. I've noticed now in today's society, women seem to have less female friends. And they're less sort of where they can go and talk to them and vent and let out, like the steam cooker, you're letting the pressure go, because the one thing you should be able to do is go to another woman and have some sisterhood, so that's just from my male point of view, because I know that when I process trauma, it's a very different way that I do it, think hunter-gatherer, I'm expecting the dinosaur to come around the corner, so again, I don't know if that's case for you. Did you find that there were women around you that were supportive?
Well, firstly, I think it's really important that you've mentioned the whole thing about processing trauma.
Yeah.
Trauma isn't what happens to you, it's how you respond to it and how your body internalizes those experiences. So you could take two people who've been through the same thing. One person might be traumatized, the other person might be completely fine. And it depends on that person's toolkits, their experiences, the state of their nervous system. There is a whole number of things that can kind of result in the fact that whether there's a long-lasting impact from that experience that they went through. And I do think there must be a link between that, the trauma, and how fibromyalgia is more prevalent in women. It has to do with the way those experiences are processed. So there needs to be more research in that area for sure.
100%. I totally agree. I mean, I'm just listening to you and I'm thinking, wow, you're 27. You sound like a wise person. I'm thinking, wow, you're wise beyond your years. You really are. Very few people understand that about trauma. It's really interesting. Stress is something different, right? It's a bit. I often say to people, if I had a migraine headache and they go, I've got a headache. It's not the same, right? It's completely different. And it's the same thing with trauma. You're right. How we process trauma, how we react to trauma, it sort of almost embeds deep inside us, I mean, I have, one of the things I do is hypnotherapy, and I understand with hypnotherapy the way the subconscious mind works. And sometimes someone will send someone to me, say a therapist, and I'll work with the hypnotherapy to bring something up which then gets dealt with, because sometimes it's so deep inside you, you don't even know it's there, right? And so when you bring it up, the danger is, in a sense, is that the subconscious mind is designed to protect you. And if it thinks that you're going to, they've done some studies, it's quite interesting. I had a back injury. I ripped a disc about a year ago, right? Which is ironic, being also a chiropractor. It's ironic I ripped a disc. But I looked into some research in a book, and they've shown that if you had 1,000 people who had an MRI, and they divided it into two, 500 people, let's say, for example, they got ripped discs, 500 people here got ripped discs, but half of those feel no pain and the other half feel extreme pain, which is fascinating. Yeah. So the book basically alludes to that if you have a trauma that's very difficult to deal with, your subconscious mind will deoxygenate a part of your body to cause so much pain so that you don't have to deal with the trauma, because it's better to deal with the physical pain than the emotional pain. Wow. And I remember reading this book and going through this kind of process. And one of the things that you say to yourself is, every day in every way, I get better and better and better.
I love that.
You say 20 times in the morning, 20 times in the evening.
Yeah.
And my back pain went,
Wow.
How many times have you heard, oh, you'll never walk again? that what we
So many
tell
times, yeah.
our patients is really important.
Hmm.
If a patient looks up to me as a back specialist, and then I'm saying to the patient, you'll never walk, or your back's really mucked up, they take that away and it becomes part of their journey.
Yeah.
So what was fascinating was something you alluded to right at the very beginning. So I want to kind of go back to that. And it's something I've done myself, and it's not easy, especially when you're people pleasers and all that, is that you had to cut people out of your life. You
Yeah.
don't have those people around you. How did you deal with that?
Well, I think when you start your healing journey, for me, it was I think I am quite a disciplined person. I knew that I needed to get from A to B, and I very much went into sort of a rational, logical state of mind, which was, okay, I need to do A, B, and C to get here. Let's just do this. It was just a very sort of, it hurt at the time. Of course, it will always hurt to lose people.
Of course.
But to change, but to get to where you need to be, you need to change. And in order to change, you need to change your environment. You can't change if everything around you is still the same.
Totally. I love that. I love that the definition of madness is to keep doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome,
Yeah. Yeah.
So so it's like one of those things where it comes down to, it's a bit like if you're in a relationship and the relationship's not going well. If you leave that relationship, you're going to hurt someone. But if you're going to stay in the relationship, you're going to hurt yourself.
Yeah.
So you're not doing anybody any favors. If the relationship's not working, as I remember a friend of mine once said when I was in a relationship and I was, not happy, he says, look, you're going to put the rhino suit on. The rhino's going to charge you. It's going to be painful, but you come out the other side. And he was right. This was a big rhino that came from me. So cool. Right. So what was the next step in the journey? So we've been diagnosed. You're looking on the internet. Dr. Google's not really giving you answers, conflicting. Where did you go from there?
So I told you that I sort of ended up in that state of depression, and I'd pretty much given up. I didn't want to go on any further. And it was actually a conversation that I had with my mum, and she said, well, what if they find a cure in 10 years? Wouldn't you have wanted to carry on living during this time until we get to that point? As someone who has a background in science, it is an absolute passion of mine. It made a lot of sense to me. Science is rapidly evolving. There is always new information to work with. And I thought, okay, that makes sense to me. That works for me. Do you know what? What if I just made myself really comfortable and just managed as well as I could from now until then, however long it takes? And that is when I accidentally came across stuff that worked. Not just worked, but I was able to walk again. I could hold a conversation. I work full time now. I basically can do everything that I thought I'd never be able to do again.
That's pretty incredible. I mean, I'm like you. I'm a bit of a science geek. I love science, but I'm also complementary. And I think the two go hand in hand. I also think that complementary has it's a bit like going into the like in South Africa, we used to call them voortrekkers, the people that went out into the wilderness and made the way ready. Complementary does that. Some things in complementary 25 years ago we were talking about, and then science comes along and goes, oh, it's interesting. It's a bit like acupuncture. We now know that the acupuncture points have a different electroconductivity than other parts of the body. And yet there were people in China doing this hundreds of years ago. So I love science. I try to find the balance by not going, where's the science, or prove it to me, you know what I mean? Because that in itself, sometimes you have to also think there's this innate intelligence that we have. I have a spiritual belief as well as a scientific belief, and I don't think they're contradictory to each other. I think they complement each other, So now this is the exciting bit for me. This is the bit where really, what did you want? What did you do? All my listeners are sitting there saying, just let her get on with it. Come on, tell me, what did you do? I want to know.
Okay, so after months of research, trialing, I've experimented on myself. I remember recording everything. There were so many things that didn't work. I spent a ton of money. I can't lie. But these are the 3 things that worked for me. So I broke them down into 3 steps. The first step was relearning. I had to completely change my understanding of fibromyalgia. That even though my body was in pain, that there was nothing wrong with my body. I had every test under the sun done and everything was coming out healthy. So I had to then believe that and go, do you know what? There is nothing wrong with my body. But fibromyalgia is an issue of the brain. Every sort of signal that was being processed was being incorrectly processed by my brain, and the wrong signals in turn were being fired out. So I had to have a new understanding of fibromyalgia. And I had to make sure I understood that the root issue was related to a dysregulated nervous system, and that stemmed from sort of stress and trauma. So there was a whole domino effect at play starting from childhood that got me to where I was. That took some time. When the doctors are telling you this is what it is and it's incurable, to then tell myself, actually, no, this is what it's a lot. It does take some time to integrate that into your brain. Second step was rewiring. This was probably the most impactful technique. So it's a type of therapeutic technique. It's a technique that comes from pain reprocessing therapy. So it's devised by someone called Alan Gordon. He wrote the book The Way Out. He had a whole myriad of symptoms as well, such as chronic pain, back pain, unexplained by the doctors. And he came up with something called somatic tracking. It's the whole idea I think it was written a book by Dr. Howard Schubiner, neurons that fire together, wire together.
That's right.
That's where he got his research from. So I looked into neuroplasticity, and it turns out fibromyalgia is a neuroplastic symptom. So the Association of Neuroplastic Symptoms is made up of a board of neuroscientists, psychiatrists, doctors who are all working hard to get this message across. So somatic tracking involves rewiring the neural networks of your brain. So you're kind of degrading sort of the old pathways and toggling onto new pathways that you are creating and designing. You're teaching your brain that actually, no, you are safe. The signals that are coming in are safe, and in turn, you do not need to be producing pain and fatigue in order to keep me safe. Well, you've got to think of it as there is a dial in your body that it's a very old dial. It's from an evolutionary perspective. Your body was designed to just go safe or not safe.
We talk about the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, the reactive brain, and that fight or flight brain. Yeah,
exactly. And we are still living. Our brains and body were designed to be living in such a simple state, and we are still using that very simple state. So we're teaching it to kind of toggle into the feelings of safety and rewiring the existing pathways. Those pathways are there by mistake. They shouldn't be there. That's why you're in pain. Your brain is using pathways incorrectly. So by rewiring using these somatic tracking techniques, you do them every day, you then create the new pathways that you need in order to heal.
And in terms of a time process on that, how long did you spend doing that?
Okay, so I did it every time my pain came on.
Yeah.
So we're talking good couple of times a day, but only when I felt confident and empowered.
Okay.
What you sort of risk is reinforcing the old pathways when you do it in a state of fear, because then your brain thinks, no, actually, I am in danger, so I will keep producing pain.
Yeah, it's a kind of a catch-22, isn't it? I mean, one of the things that when I was teaching meditation to a group of people, and I said, if you're trying to meditate, you're not meditating, right? So you don't stop trying. And what I said to them is, you'll have a thought that comes in on a blindside you on a Tuesday afternoon. Do you know what I mean? And it'll come and try and sabotage you. Now, I say it's a bit like having a 2-year-old kid that's poking you, going like that, right? And if you ignore the kid, what does the kid do? It goes and it gets even worse. Okay.
Yeah.
So what you do is you stop, you look at the child, just give them that stern look, and guess what? It just goes away, disempowers it. And that's the way from what you're saying, I understand as well. That's the way I kind of look at it, is that if you resist, it persists.
Yeah.
And I think you have to say to yourself, okay, I see you there, but hey, you don't bother me, you know? And I love the way that I've not heard it sort of put the way you put it, but about how not to do that when you're in a particular state, because you're reinforcing that state, aren't you? You're associating. It's a bit like if you smell a particular smell, you're catapulted back to that memory. And if you're reinforcing that state, you're going to keep catapulting. You're going to create the negative instead of the positive.
Yeah, you've summarized that really well.
Carry on. I'm so excited to
No, you've summarized that really well, and I'm really glad you brought up the example of a 2-year-old. You could when you're somatic tracking, when you're doing that exercise, you can imagine your brain to be a 2-year-old, and your body is saying pain here, pain there, and instead of kind of being overwhelmed with the frustration, you just check in with the pain, let it do its thing, ride it out, and then come back to your body. That's the essential of somatic tracking.
That makes sense. I went through maybe you've been through it because you seem to be quite an enlightened person, but there's called the darkness of the soul. Churchill used to call it his black dog. We all go through some kind of challenge in life to our status, our ego. Who really are we? Are we our parents? Are we our parents' beliefs? And it's quite a dark place, to go. And I remember going through that myself, and I really had to dial in on myself and kind of trying to figure out, who am I? And that's quite something when you actually ask yourself, who are you, right? Yeah, that's not easy.
Identity and chronic illness is such a big thing, because there were so many traits that I thought were me were in fact actually fibromyalgia. So having now recovered, I went through a massive grieving process in terms of, I call them my growing pains.
Yeah.
Because it hurt, because I realized I wasn't that person. That person was the fibromyalgia person.
Yeah.
Those traits that you develop are coping mechanisms and learnt behaviors that your nervous system adopts and your brain adopts in order to kind of protect you.
That's fascinating. You. I mean, sometimes people come into me and I say to them, do you want to be well? And they look at me as if I'm absolutely lost the plot. And I go, well, of course I want to be well. And I said, do you? Because that means you're going to have to give up the groups, defining yourself as, I am someone with fibromyalgia. There's all of that goes with it. And that's really hard, because that's, like you say, that's part of it. It becomes your personality. Yeah. People almost treat you a particular way. And it takes courage to break away from that, right?
Yeah. And I can't believe how many people struggle to kind of let go of that identity. Some people have had fibromyalgia their entire lives. We're talking decades. To then tell them, you're going to have to give up your whole way of life, like your living situation, maybe the people around you, your environment, you're going to have to change. There is that resistance, because our nervous systems like what it's familiar with.
Yeah.
And the thing that you're trying to heal is the thing that's trying to keep you stuck. So you've got to then separate yourself from your biology and think, no, I need to do something else in order to rescue my biology.
It's a weird one. I actually had somebody once complain to me that I'd made them well. I know. They because all of a sudden they had to go to work. They couldn't stay at home.
Yes.
They couldn't rely on their other half to, so they would sit there and they'd watch daytime TV, and they'd got into all this thing, and they're really upset with me.
Yeah, I mean, I have to carry my own bags now. I have to work full time. Yes. So yeah, there are drawbacks to healing.
So next process on that. So on these steps, where do we go from there?
So we've done relearning,
yeah,
rewiring, and then reprocessing is the last thing.
Okay.
That is the inner work that you need. So I had the help of a psychotherapist who specialized in trauma. We used bilateral techniques such as EMDR to basically reprocess life events and work on.
Can you explain that? Because obviously people don't understand these acronyms. What's EMDR?
EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing.
Okay.
So it's an example of a bilateral technique, which is basically tapping into movements that help. It's almost like a comforting technique that helps your body feel safe to allow it to sort of unlock things. You mentioned earlier about how we sort of don't even realize traumatic events because they're so suppressed, they're very unconscious. So that comforting technique allows your body to feel safe, brings things to the surface, and allows you to correctly process things now.
Well, that's a really powerful technique. With my fibromyalgia patients, one of the techniques I do is I get them to think of the trauma with their eyes closed, and then I see where they lock up. Now, what's interesting is when they do that, I say to them, do you notice how your subconscious mind forms pictures when you think of that? So now what I get them to do is I adjust them into the position that takes them out of that position they were standing. So say, for example, you're having an argument and your right leg's back. Every time you put your right leg back, your subconscious mind associates that with the trauma and triggers the emotional response. So what I do is I adjust them out of that position. And then when they close their eyes, what's fascinating is they can't make pictures. It's like they can't latch onto that trauma anymore. Because I've disassociated the physical response to the emotional response, So, but what I love most, if I'm honest about what you're saying, it's a step 1, 2, and 3. Not only that, I think that it's something that people listening to this can think, wow, I can go and do that, So the first question really, and I'm very much, if you tell me I can't, I'll tell you I can, right? I'm
That's a great
I'm
mindset. Yeah.
stubborn like that, right? It drives my wife absolutely crazy. But the thing I would say is that the first thing that's coming to my head, and I'm going to say this to you because through this whole conversation, I've been thinking this: you need to write a book.
I have started writing a book, yeah. And it wasn't even my idea, it was my mum's, and she's I think she's quite religious and spiritual as well. She said, maybe this happened to you so that you could heal and spread this very needed knowledge. There are millions of people out there who don't have any support, who don't have this information. This information should be made freely available, which is why I do all the
100%.
social media work that I do. The
Yeah.
fact
And
that it's not common
your
knowledge.
generation is the one that should do it, not old fogies like me.
I mean, yeah, so I've started writing the book, and I guess I was thinking there is a ton more of research that I need to put into
Yeah.
it, and it's going to take me a while. It's already taken me a year and a half, and it's going to take me a bit longer. So I've already started writing a ebook, sort of a short
Okay.
introductory guide, which encompasses all the information and can give you real world techniques and practices that you can start using from today. So I'll have that online in a few weeks.
Okay. Because I mean, one of the things I found is that I don't have big research grants. I have a background in musculoskeletal, obviously, and I'm a nutritionist and I'm also a hypnotherapist. And what I found was that when I reached out to academic institutions, they're very guarded. There's a lot of ego in academia. And I've said to them, look, I've done some research. This is what I've discovered. I'm more than happy for you to have it. I don't even need my name mentioned. I'm not interested. So again, I'd say that to you, anything that I've got, if you want to use anything that's in my book, please do use it. Don't ask me for
Thank you.
permission. Just use it.
That's really kind. Thank you.
My passion is to help people. So I'm really not attached to any financial incentive on this and whatever. But I think with you, you're the right person to write the book. In the sense that I had cancer and I overcame cancer. And so therefore I've got a little bit of authority to talk about that because I overcame it, right? And I think that's what's so endearing about your story is it feels heartfelt, genuine. Because when somebody's talking about something that's not genuine, it's disingenuous, we know, we know. And you're living proof of that, how we can change our lives. So is the idea to write the book and kind of carry on researching and then get it published?
Yeah, I want to make sure there's as much science in there as possible, alongside my personal
Yeah,
experiences as well, because new research is coming out and it's almost proving kind of what I've accidentally come across. So both are going hand in hand. So it'd be
yeah.
great to sort of integrate that. Yeah.
Because I've seen that. I mean, when a lot of people when they've gone to the doctor and they've said to the doctor about fibromyalgia, and the doctors, a lot of them actually said, not all of them. That's not fair to the medical community, but a lot of them have said, oh, it's in your head, and it's going to go away. And they said, well, what do I say to the doctor? And I said, well, go onto the internet and look at the research that's been done at some universities around the world that are pointing towards an autoimmune disease, that are pointing to the fact that there is a difference in pain perception with people with fibromyalgia. This is a real thing. This is not people, making this up. I do find, it's a question to you really, and there's been a lot in the news recently about this, the way that women are treated in illness does seem to be very different to the way the men are treated in illness. I've always said that if men had a menstrual cycle, they'd come up with a solution for the pain very quickly. Because people just think that you have your menstrual cycle and it's just something you put up with. For some women, it's incredibly debilitating, as is menopause, as is so many things. So, did you find as a woman you felt you weren't taken as seriously in relation to this?
Unfortunately, I do have to say yeah to that. Even before fibromyalgia, it took me years to get prescription painkillers for my period pain.
Yeah,
I remember having a specialist turn to me and go, I can't believe you've not had anything prescribed. I mean, I would kind of feel nauseous and get knocked out
yeah,
from my pain levels, and I was still just told to use paracetamol. I'm
yeah,
now on a nice collection of painkillers that I use for my period pain, but
yeah.
I just can't believe that they would look at me and see sort of a young looking female and go, no, it's fine. It's probably just in her head. They didn't take it seriously. I remember when I went to my doctor's appointments for my fibromyalgia, having been through such a difficult experience with the doctors beforehand about pain before, I just knew I was not going to be taken seriously. So even now, I sort of freeze up. I shut down, can't communicate my pain properly because I just know or I just feel like they're not going to take it seriously. And in those appointments for my fibromyalgia, my mum actually came with me and communicated for me. Like
Yeah.
there's that joke that like you take your parents with you and they'll speak to you at the doctors for you. But I felt like for me, I needed that because if she wasn't going to be able to communicate it, I wasn't. And
Yeah,
even if
because
I
I think
did,
that the best doctor is you, right?
yeah,
You're the
no one
best
knows your
doctor.
body better than you do.
100%, 100%. And that's why I think if anybody out there is a doctor listening to this, I think, listen to your patients. Now, obviously, in the UK, we've got a real crisis right now in the healthcare system. The average in the UK, I think a GP gets about 8 minutes. And I have friends who are GPs, I have friends who are consultants. So, I don't want to in any way think that I'm sort of bashing, the medical profession. They've done incredible things. I'm here today as testimony to them. They're amazing. I think they need our support, our love, or whatever. You know what I mean? I think it's very, very important. I just think that we need to understand for a long time now that women have not felt heard when it's come to this. And I think it's very important that we start changing that. And I do think it's going to have to come from women. And women like you, to be honest, because you do have a scientific mind. So because what they're going to do is they're going to come at you with science,
Yes, and I can come back at
and
them
you
with
come
science.
back
I
at them.
remember one doctor asked me, "Are you a doctor?" And I said, "No, I just know my body and I've done my
Absolutely.
research."
I don't know. I don't know why we have that. I think in some countries, I don't know if we have it in the UK, but you're actually not allowed to use the word heal unless you're a doctor. Can you believe it? So I mean, one of the things that I again, this is a question to you. A lot of the people I come across who have fibromyalgia, they also have hypermobility, or in severe cases, what's called EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Is this your case? Is this something with you, or have you noticed that?
Can I just double check hypermobility? Is that not being able to sort of like
Yeah,
lack of
so
physical
basically you
movement?
get different, I think it's about 13 types you can get. And it's that where everything, for example, let's say I'm standing up, my knees should only move within a certain range, my arms in a certain range. And what you get with hypermobility is you get the skin's more elastic. You get things like the constipation is worse, period pains are worse, headaches are worse, because you've got to think about the amount of pressure to push the blood around the arteries, for example. Well, it takes a lot more because everything's so more elastic. And I think partly part of that fibromyalgia is, and we talked about this just now, is this people pleasing. So it's like you have no boundaries. And think about the body not having boundaries. It becomes too elastic. There's nothing containing it, if that makes sense. And so I'm interested. Have you come across this at all in your research?
That isn't actually something I've come across in my research, but it is something that people have asked me before. So it's probably something that I look into and
Okay.
see where the connection is and how it links to fibromyalgia. In
Okay.
terms of kind of movements of the body when I had fibromyalgia, I struggled with basic movements. I remember not being able to have my water bottle anymore because it was too heavy and my hands would shake.
Right.
This is in a matter of weeks. I lost what felt like losing all my muscle.
Yeah.
Get out of breath. I'd have to lean on everything. I couldn't. I'd need a balcony. I'd need a stick. I'd need to hold on for dear life because I
Yeah.
didn't have the strength, the muscle to do anything.
And that's interesting because the words I hear there is losing, don't have the strength, inability to hold on. Those are all things that are feeling like there's no boundaries. You know what I mean? It's like there's no support. It's fascinating because even what I discovered with silica, for example, if you think about silica, connective tissue. So why is it that I've got that? There's that element in that, and we talked about neuroplasticity and how the brain can affect the outcome. And again, I mean, I know that one of the things I know that is really important, and I say this to a lot of women, is, we get period apps, don't we? So you can get a period app, take at least omega-3 a good 4 days before your period. Things like this, these are the things. And my approach has always been food is your medicine, then we go homeopathic, then we go supplements, and then we go pharmaceutical. They all have their place. I think the problem is we're in a paradigm where we think that there's only one solution. And you
Yeah.
give somebody a hammer, guess what? Everything's a nail.
Yeah. I mean, the Western world of medicine, like all lies in the fact that here's something that's wrong with you. here, take this pill, you're going to get
Agree.
better. With healing fibromyalgia, there is no magic pill that's going to get you better. There is no medication, no tablet, no nothing that you can take that will get you better. What's going to get you better is these small, consistent techniques that you build on over time. These small steps will make a massive difference in your life over time, and you will get better.
So I'm like with anybody I come on here, it's not about promoting me, it's about promoting you, basically. It's empowering people. The reason I started this podcast, Zenfootsteps, is because I was fed up of all the negativity in the world. You know, there's always a spin about them and us, and fear and fear. This is not what this is about. This is about people being empowered and feeling like there is hope in the world, you know? So how do, in terms of reaching out to you, because obviously I know you're on TikTok, how do people get hold of you? Because I think as soon as this goes out, I'm going to be putting it on my social media, but you're going to get a lot of people. So have you thought about, for example, working, and I'm not against remuneration of, you know, sort of getting paid for what you do. I think there's nothing wrong with that. I don't have an issue with that. You know, we've all got to put food on the table. I mean, can people work one-to-one with you? Could they sort of set up a Zoom call or something? Have you thought about that?
Do you know, initially, I never thought about that. I remember just putting up my social media channels just to share my story. I did this for old me. I was so scared and afraid and in pain. And I was like, I'm doing this for her, because I didn't have any information at the time to go on. So I put this information for free out for people to use on my content, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. And then I had people message me, can I work with you? Can I do one-to-ones? And at the time I thought, why? Why would you want to work? Like, I give the information out for free. And even in this podcast, I have as well. But I think when I spoke to my friends, actually, my friends told me some people might need structured support. They need the information tailored to them, their situations and their lifestyle. And just having a friendly face to guide them through the ups and downs. Yeah, so I've looked into the sessions now, and yeah, if you are interested, you can reach out to me for one-to-one support.
Yeah, I think it's so important. I mean, I'm even thinking of maybe setting up sort of a retreat where I get people like you along and other people. We run it together.
Yeah.
Maybe we do a seminar where we have a day and people with fibromyalgia come along, and
That would be amazing.
you know,
Yeah.
we work with them, and we have different speakers. I'm always trying to reach out to people like Rangan Chatterjee, for example, one of my kind of heroes. You know, he's a doctor that's quite well known on TV and stuff, and he kind of looked at functional medicine. I think in fact he's even stopped being a GP right now, because people would come into the practice and they kind of, it's like having a star there, you know. So, but there's so many people. Gabor Mate, I talk about these people. They're amazing people, you know. And I'm quite happy to promote other people's podcasts. You know, it's like really fun. People are really funny. They don't want to promote other people, but hey, why not? You know. So okay. So how do people? What are the contact details they need to get hold of you?
Yeah, so on TikTok and YouTube, you can find me on Curing Fibromyalgia.
Okay.
So just 2 words together.
Yeah.
And then on Instagram, it's curing.fibromyalgia.
Okay,
On my TikTok, there is an email that you can email me on as well if you are interested in sessions and working together.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, and I'll of course be putting I'm at JLL Zen, and I'll be putting that out. This podcast is going to be going out in February. I'll let you know obviously when it's there, and I'll tell people also when it's out. Now we have a little tradition now on Zen Footsteps, and we always say goodbye with a favorite quote. As you can see, mine from Gandhi is above my head: be the change you want to see in the world. That's my favorite quote amongst many, but Gandhi's a kind of a hero of mine, a great man. So what's your quote and why?
Mine's been taken from Albert Einstein, and I don't know if I can even remember it word to word now, but it's something like, in order to keep moving forward, in order to keep your balance, you must keep moving forward. And I went back to that quote so many times during my health journey, because I just thought, like, when things didn't work, so many different things didn't work to help, I had to keep trying, keep moving forward. That was the only way I would keep my mental and emotional state in balance. So in order to keep balance, I have to keep moving forward, keep trying different things, keep learning, just keep going forward.
It's amazing, isn't it? Anybody who's really challenged in life, they come across that. The Buddhists have a lovely saying, which is the inability to accept change is the cause of all unhappiness.
Oh, okay.
And I love that, because the universe is expanding. and it's expanding and expanding. Change is inevitable, but if
Yeah.
you embrace the change, you could be that butterfly and come
Yeah.
out of your cocoon. So hey, listen, thank you very much. I really do appreciate you being my guest, and I'm going to be telling everybody about you. You're going to be a brilliant author, you're going to be a brilliant mentor. I am amazed at your age, honestly. If anybody's watching this, go to YouTube and watch it to see what Lana looks like, because you're listening to this person, and when you listen to someone, you can't see their face because they'll be listening to this on podcast as on audio. You kind of look at people and you have this image and you go and see it and they go, wow, that person's like really young. How did she get so wise and so quickly? So, but listen, thank you. I really
No, thank you.
appreciate
Yeah.
it, and take care. I'm sure we're going to have many more conversations.
Take care as well.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye now.